Good evening. I'm Marcia Kavanaugh. Thanks for joining us. Well, Ray Nagin does not have to return to the city that he once governed until January, now that his trial date has been postponed. We'll examine what might be going on behind the bench. We'll also look at investigations in St. Tammany Parish, Bobby Jindal thinking presidential, an upstate congressional runoff, our Future Watch segment updates Federal City, and Pelicans at play where Hornets once buzzed. Starting for us tonight are tonight's Informed Sources, Errol Laborde, producer of Informed Sources, John Maginnis, publisher LaPolitics, Don Ostrom, Channel 12's Future Watch reporter, and Gordon Russell, managing editor of Investigations, The New Orleans Advocate. But right now, I'm just going to toss it over to Errol because he has a couple of things to say right now.
First of all, I want to acknowledge Larry Lorenz, who for many years served as host of the show. Yesterday in his Facebook, he wrote, "Now I'll have a full retirement to enjoy." And we all wish him the best of that retirement and the most enjoyment. So, and thank you for his contribution. But I also want to introduce, or perhaps it's reintroduce, Marcia Kavanaugh. Marcia first broke into TV in New Orleans as a co-anchor on Channel 6 on WDSU back with Warren Bell. But in 1984, it was Marcia. She was actually the mother of Informed Sources. She began this program in 1984, including being part of coming the name, the concept. And she was even in the band at the time and got the musicians, and they worked on the theme that we still have. And so she was involved with every element of creating the show. And she was the moderator for several years until she had to move on. She's been around Channel 12 for years. Since 2007, she's been the community projects producer here at Channel 12, doing a lot of really great work, winning all kinds of awards, including as recently as this past week, where she won a national award for wonderful projects on criminal justice. So, Mama's back, okay? Marcia, take it away. It's yours.
Thank you so much, Errol. And certainly I have to echo the thanks to Larry for his years of service. And also I want to note that Paula Pendarvis was the co-producer on that project that we just won the award for. And it's always been wonderful working with Paula on our projects. And I am very excited to be back here. And this is 3 sons, 1 gorgeous daughter-in-law, and two absolutely beautiful grandchildren later. I'm back here, delighted to be here. Look forward to some very, very interesting times because, as we all know, there are always interesting stories and a lot of news in this New Orleans region. So we're going to kick it off right now. I'm going to throw it to you, Gordon. We're going to be talking about Ray Nagin. Now, his trial date has been postponed. Yeah. So why don't you just sort of fill us in again, background us as to what has put him in this situation?
The situation he's in is he's facing 21 corruption-related counts, mostly bribery, wire fraud, those kinds of things. And the feds have alleged that he took part in four or five, depending on how you count, different schemes in which he used the power of his office in exchange for he gave favors to contractors in exchange for gifts or cash or what have you. I won't go through all of them, but in general, there's the allegations involve cash bribes in exchange for contracts at City Hall. There's one of the alleged schemes involves Home Depot, which had needed some help getting rid of. They were building a new store, and there was a proposal to have a community benefits agreement in which they were going to provide jobs at a certain wage, and they didn't want to do that, and he supposedly helped in killing that in exchange for getting a contract for the granite countertop family that he and his family ran. Anyway, that's kind of the backdrop of the case. Everyone was expecting it to start on Monday. Everybody's been gearing up, the media, the FBI, the prosecutors, Ray Nagin's defense team, and so forth. And kind of at the last minute, there was a delay of 3 months, which was a little bit of a surprise. People I've talked to say you should never be surprised to see a delay granted in one of these complicated federal trials.
It's already been delayed once, Sid.
It has. In this case, the judge had denied a request for a delay earlier, but she had said that she might entertain one more request, but she said she might be inclined to grant a brief delay, and this was another 3 months. I don't know that there's any big significance to it other than maybe the holidays are coming, and it may have been difficult to schedule it over the next
December.
couple of months, and it's a trial that's expected to last 2 or 3 weeks.
Well, Nagin had tried to actually get the charges dismissed, right?
Correct. So as your viewers are probably aware, there's been this separate scandal involving the U.S. Attorney's Office and their inappropriate online commenting by several former prosecutors who are no longer with the office. And a number of defendants have tried to make hay from that and get out of charges that are pending, or in the case of the Danziger Bridge defendants, to get a new trial. And that was the one big overturning that's happened, is the Danziger Bridge verdicts against those 5 officers who are now going to get a new trial on the basis of prosecutorial misconduct. And as you said, Ray Nagin had tried that same gambit, and the judge has rejected it.
The inevitable speculation is a plea bargain. Does this increase the chances for a plea bargain? Could this be just allowing more time and more room?
I mean, I hear 2 schools of thought on that, and this is coming from, I try to talk to people who might know something about this. Some people seem to think that it decreases the chances for a plea bargain, and that if it had to go to trial on Monday, that he might have been apt to take the deal. There was a deal on the table for a maximum of 5 years in prison that he didn't take, and one school of thought is that this was so daunting with this trial starting Monday that he might have been inclined to take the deal, and that now that there's 3 months more to prepare, maybe he's less likely to take a deal. But on the other hand, 3 months means there's 3 more months to discuss it, and I guess 3 more months for him to look at the government's case and decide what kind of, whether he thinks he can beat it, and then the same for his lawyer.
Meanwhile, some cooperating witnesses are awaiting sentencing, right? Those who are within the orbit of this case. How does that play into this delay?
So I would expect all of those to be delayed. That's not a guarantee, but there's a number of witnesses. Greg Mefford, who was Ray Nagin's chief technology officer, is awaiting sentencing. Anthony Jones, who replaced, he was the second one after Greg Mefford, he's also awaiting sentencing. Frank Fradella, who's accused of providing Ray Nagin with free truckloads of granite and other things. And Aaron Bennett, who's actually already in jail. He's a businessman accused of facilitating some of these bribes. And then you've got Mark St. Pierre, who was a technology officer, technology contractor at City Hall, who's already serving a 17-year prison sentence and is likely to testify. But so all of those people are awaiting sentencing except St. Pierre, and I would say they'll probably all be pushed back until after the trial. The government usually prefers that because they feel like the person has an incentive to testify the way they would like them to testify. Now, some judges will say, well, you can go start serving your sentence and you can come tell the truth when it's time for you to come tell the truth. And they can get their sentence. Exactly.
After that.
Yeah. So that's a possibility, too.
So this 11th hour delay, I've heard that, it's sort of a strategy, too, to make sure that everybody keeps working on this case. Is that something that you've heard as well? And are the prosecutors beefing up a little bit, too? I heard they added another prosecutor to the team.
They added a third guy. I mean, I think that's probably, there's 2 primary prosecutors on this case, and they're the same 2 guys, Matt Coman and Rick Pickens, and they've handled all of this whole family of cases, the Mark St. Pierre case, the Greg Mefford case, the Anthony Jones case, and so on. And those guys presumably know the facts of this thing in and out. It's it's all they've been working on for years, I would assume. The new guy they added, Matt Chester, is kind of a well-respected prosecutor in the office, I think, and they probably added him because it's useful to have another guy there during trial. He might notice something that a witness said, or, it's for trial
So
purposes.
we kind of know what they're going to be doing over the holidays then. We're getting ready for this January trial. Let's go on over to John. There was a congressional race in North Louisiana. Why don't you tell us about that?
Well, it was a primary in Northeast Louisiana in the 5th Congressional District to replace Rodney Alexander, who resigned sort of abruptly. And it ended up being 2 Republicans in the runoff. So really, in the big scheme of things, it's not going to matter much which one gets in. It's more of a difference. It's coming down to almost like an insider versus outsider race. State Senator Neil Reiser, he has the endorsement of all the other congressmen in the delegation, the House Majority Leader Eric Cantor, a lot of legislators, and he's running against this guy who came out of nowhere with a self-funded candidate, another Republican, Vance McAllister, and he has the endorsement of the Duck Dynasty star, Phil Robertson. That's pretty much worth more than all the legislators, and it sure got him into the runoff. But Reiser has a substantial, like a 15-point lead from the primary, but that doesn't mean a whole lot once you get into the runoff. The Democrats they really botched this one, although there wasn't a whole lot they could do about it. The three Democratic candidates who were all elected officials, one the mayor of Monroe, two state legislators, combined got 30% of the vote, and the best one finished third. There was some talk that the mayor of Monroe, Jamie Mayo, was kind of upset with the party, with Mary Landrieu for not clearing the field, but it's easier said than done. If some politician wants to run, he can run. And but it showed that this is a strong, even though I think it's 50% registered Democrats in the district, they only got 30% of the vote. It is a strong GOP performance district. And these two candidates, Reiser and McAllister, they agree on just about everything from gay marriage to abortion to gun rights, and they probably disagree on how much they should be opposed to the Affordable Care Act. I mean, they're both either opposed or vehemently opposed. So it's going to be a race like that. The runoff is November 16th.
The boundary of this district is where?
It comes into the North Shore. It covers Washington Parish, Bogalusa. It's the northeast sector of the state, but because that area is losing so much population in this last redistricting, the area had to grow, and so it takes a left turn at Marksville or New Roads and goes the whole way to the Mississippi line in Bogalusa. So it's a funny looking district, but it was done in order to preserve two North Louisiana districts. I'm not sure by the time we get to 2020 we'll be able to maintain that, because these things, they had to keep growing further and further south, right, just to make up the population.
And how much money has been spent on this campaign so far? What are we looking at?
Reiser's raised over $500,000, and McAllister, wrote a check for about $350,000, and so they'll they got the Monroe media market, Alexandria, and even Baton Rouge. So it can be an expensive race. And so we'll see how much more money Neil Reiser can raise and how further into his own pocket Vance McAllister will go. But so far, it's been just an interesting race in the term of you got these two Republicans, but they got to try to find ways in which they can be different from each other.
Duck Dynasty going to continue to also support the
surprise
candidate?
Well, he is, and some of the Neil Reiser has the endorsement of the Tea Party of Louisiana, and McAllister has supported a lot of the Pentecostals. So take your pick.
And so the runoff again is
November 16th.
All righty, well, we'll catch up with you on that one. Don, let's take a look at Federal City. Now, the Algiers was a naval support activity.
It was a naval support activity. Before Katrina, we went through the whole BRAC Commission hearings, if people remember that. That's the base realignment and closure system where the military was closing bases around the country, and Louisiana put together a group and said, save this base, it's got potential, we could have tens of thousands of jobs there and a real quality of life set up, and give us the land. And there were disputes even then, once the land was handed over, as to who would sign the lease with the Navy, a long-term lease with the United States Navy. The city was very busy with Hurricane Katrina stuff. The state said, we don't want to be on the hook. The Navy said we don't want to sign, and ultimately said we don't want to sign with a nonprofit, which was the New Orleans Federal Alliance that was set up to run the whole federal city. So in the end, the Algiers Development District signed on to that lease. And the Algiers Development District is a state entity that has a lot of local politicians involved, State Representative Jeff Arnold, among others. They signed the lease but said we're going to transfer running this facility to the New Orleans Federal Alliance, the nonprofit. And they went forward, and they got the Marine Forces Reserve Command to stay in New Orleans and stay in Algiers. They completed new structures for them in the secure perimeter of the formal naval support activity, and saved 2,000 jobs, and kept the Marines here, and kept the commander of the Marines in a house there too. Then you have the rest of the base that's not in a secure area, and they're trying to make it into a quality of life big center for Algiers and for the military that's there, and as a business draw. And there's been a whole lot of political infighting between the Algiers Development District, the New Orleans Federal Alliance, HRI, who was signed on as the master developer with a national company called ECC, lawsuits going back and forth, and it's stymied a lot of the project. People who are looking to develop in this region don't want to get involved with local politicians and lawsuits. That's one thing that's going to just scare them all away. So the YMCA has expanded there. The YMCA will be building a pool at that facility sometime. The money has now been set aside. There's a Subway, there's a barber shop, there's a military credit union, there's a military school that has been wildly successful that's getting new buildings that should open in January, and they have more than 300 students and haven't even added a senior class yet. So there have been some successes. But just recently, the facility lost out on the opportunity to have an IT program with the military move in from Missouri. They said no. And there's a debate about whether they were scared of all the infighting and lack of support, or whether the sequester and the situation in Washington, which really caused that problem. There's huge potential there, $150 million spent on a master plan and projects there, but it has not lived up to the dream yet. I talked to Representative Jeff Arnold today, who said within the next 5 years, expect to see at least a grocery store there and a pharmacy there, and up to maybe 5,000 jobs. 10 years, the goal is 10 years and 10,000 jobs, but right now there are no big companies lined up. It's been
That's
slow.
a real disappointment then.
It was a great idea, and nobody's willing to say it was too great an idea yet. There's a lot of land, there's a lot of opportunity, but it seems like there's been so much infighting. Nobody's been able to be the leader to say this is how we're going to do it, and it's going to set up, and this is how it's going to work. And you've got military people dealing with business people dealing with political people, and everybody thinks the political way, the business way, the military way is the right way, and they haven't found a real meeting of the minds yet.
Sometimes great ideas stall, and then they pick up again down the road, and sometimes they don't.
Right.
They do need an authority figure. They need this
They need one central figure, and they need a plan that works on all fronts, that really makes it a draw to the region. And a business incubator apparently is going in, a real high-tech kind of company. So there are some good things. There's a much potential, but it hasn't taken off.
And the Joint Development Committee, is it directing it at all?
The Joint Development Committee is what resulted out of all of this infighting. Right. It's part of the Algiers Development District and part of the New Orleans Federal Alliance, in a situation where they're supposed to now work together and resolve all the lawsuits and actually make some things happen.
Well, that's one we'll continue to look into.
Yes.
Gordon, there are some investigations going on, continuing or somewhat resolved also in St. Tammany Parish. Tell us about that.
Sure. Well, I mean, the big news this week was Peter Galvin, the longtime coroner in St. Tammany Parish, who's been the subject of umpteen news stories by about every media outlet in town, has pled guilty on Wednesday to theft charges. Essentially, it was a fairly boilerplate kind of thing he pled to, which is that he was just trying to help himself to some of the office's money. He raised his salary to an exorbitant level, which actually wasn't part of the charges against him, but he was the highest paid coroner in the state, maybe the highest paid public official in the state, except Les Miles, if you consider him a public official. He paid himself for unused vacation pay. He used office money to buy some things for his boat. He had a deal where he has a private medical practice which was providing services to the Slidell jail, but the services were actually being rendered by an employee of the coroner's office, so that was allowing him to profit off of this, off of his public office. So he pled guilty to all of these things. He's been, it's been widely reported that he was under investigation for a while, and he was finally charged in a bill of information a couple of weeks ago and pled guilty. And one of the striking things about this to me has been he has been completely silent throughout the entire thing. He's refused to appear before any public body. There's been this big recall petition in St. Tammany, which is shut down now as moot, but he's never once sort of come out to defend himself. And even when he was initially arraigned in federal court, there was, of course, a phalanx of TV cameras and everything there, and he stayed inside the courthouse for hours, sort of seemingly waiting to see if everybody would go home, and they didn't, and they sort of captured him on the way to his car, but he never made any statement. And then on the day he pled guilty, that was sort of the question, is he going, sometimes you'll see a defendant make some kind of a speech, and he may still do that on sentencing day, but something where they apologize for what they've done or whatever, and he just very monotone, said, yes, I'm guilty, and walked out and said nothing.
Let me get you to quickly mention the other investigation that you're looking into.
Oh, well, we published a story recently in the New Orleans Advocate about, and we're looking into some further things on this, but about the work release programs run by the St. Tammany Parish Sheriff, which have been dogged by some allegations of cronyism. They've privatized the work release program there. So it's a profit-making program where some people who have ties to the sheriff are running a work release program, which allows prisoners to work in private businesses, and the people who run the work release program get to keep a pretty high percentage of the inmates' wages.
That's been one of the oldest scams going on in Louisiana, and that goes back to the convict labor out of the penitentiary and some guy making money off that. I mean that's an old one.
Yeah.
Even though the sheriff says these are the best qualified people.
Right, and the interesting part of it is the sheriff, for a while the sheriff was running an in-house program, and then there was a set of people who had some links to him who were running a private program. He recently privatized his in-house program, saying that the private people were running it more efficiently. So,
John, I'm going to toss it over to you now. Let's talk about presidential politics and our governor. What's going on with the Governor General? He's established a new foundation?
He's established, a nonprofit, a 501c4 called America Next, and he says it's so he can offer his solutions to America's problems and challenges, the type of things that Congress can't seem to get their arms around. And it could be something that would be, mainly it's going to be a platform for him for once he does leave office in January 2016. He said he's undecided yet about whether he's going to run for president or not. I think he is undecided. I think he really has to see what the landscape is going to be then, because based on some straw polls he's entered in, he didn't fare very well. And I don't think he's going to be jumping into the Iowa primary to come in 12th.
Does that give him a way to transfer political campaigns from one organization to another?
Well, he's not. I don't think it's a way that he can use to contribute money to other candidates. I don't think a 501c4 can be. I could be wrong, but I don't think it is. Mainly, it can be, I think, a bully pulpit for him, and he's going to be able to raise money, and not coincidentally, be able to draw a paycheck from it too, for running this thing. So yeah, I think more than anything, it's going to be a voice for him, because even if Jindal doesn't run for president or runs for innocent primaries and doesn't get nominated, he intends to be a political player on the national scene for a long time, and this is going to be his forum for which he can do that, and his outfit from which he can manage all this.
this is the first time he's actually publicly
done something. Yeah,
well,
right.
He's always denied that he was
even thinking about it.
Yeah, and this is the first time he kind of said, well, maybe, or something. Well, I forget what he said exactly.
He said he's undecided, but,
right.
he
didn't say I have the job I want.
Right, exactly, because he's not going to have it too much longer.
And the name of the organization again is
America
Foundation.
Next.
America
Next.
And so is Jindal going to be next for America? I guess that's the question. Where would he stand in the political landscape right now, do you think, in terms of the Republican possibles?
And he kind of leaves that vague himself. He seems at times he seems like he's a more moderate type, other times he seems like he's a little more conservative. So I think it would take him actually getting into a primary and start having to take positions to. But right now his position is that he's the governor, and that people in Washington can't seem to get anything straight. The only people who can do anything right are governors. And so that's his argument right now.
All right, John, thanks. Well, Errol, basketball season, the Pelicans about to take to the arena.
Yeah. If you look at last Wednesday night in New Orleans, over at the Sanger, you had Book of Mormons playing, which is raunchy but nevertheless drawing huge crowds. I mean, it's it's a renowned musical. The same night you had the Hornets, the Pelicans, who were playing the Miami Heat. Which is the biggest name in basketball. So actually you had, in downtown New Orleans, you had the biggest Broadway theater production that's running, it's a roadshow, and the biggest name NBA team, both playing in downtown New Orleans, both playing to sellout crowds, both playing in buildings that have been restored recently. The Sanger in its new form, which is really beautiful. The arena has gotten some more suites, and so there's really just a good feeling, I think, about what's going on in New Orleans. And, since New Orleans got this NBA franchise, originally the Hornets, it was always the troubled team in the NBA. New Orleans and the Sacramento Kings. And going into last season, whenever people talk about which city is most likely to lose its team, they talk about New Orleans and Sacramento. And Sacramento seemed on the way to Seattle. It resolved its differences. Under Tom Benson's ownership, you get the feeling that the team is here to stay, at least for a long time, unless it really bottoms out. But it seems like a much more secure operation, and nobody is talking about the New Orleans franchise as a team that's going to be lost now. You know, probably the switch to Pelicans in the long run was a good idea, just kind of localizing its new colors and just new people. And so this could be exciting. People always say New Orleans is a football town. Truth is, every city is a football town during football season. And so what happens is, you know, from October through December, basketball is a hard sell. But what happens is after football season, and the team is expected to be a playoff contender. In the NBA, there's 2 divisions, and to be a playoff contender, you got to finish in the top 8. And so, you know, it could be. But the big thing is that it's a young team. And so if it's a playoff contender this year, it's more likely to be a playoff contender next year and the year after. So for a team that's been troubled, there are some encouraging things. But for you know, we got this team from Charlotte. And the people from Charlotte never got over losing that Hornets name. And the NBA has allowed that next season, Charlotte can get the Hornets name again. And so the Hornets will go back and presumably Hugo. So the people in Charlotte will be happy. They'll have their Hornets. We'll have our Pelicans. Too bad we couldn't get the Jazz, but the Jazz
I
named
know.
it.
But happy to have the Pelicans.
Statute of limitations is
Right,
passed on
right.
that, I guess.
And who knows, maybe one day the Pelicans and the Hornets will be playing each other for the NBA championship.
And then we'll really get confused. Well, it will be very endeared to our Pelicans and used to that name again. Errol, what do you see coming up in the future for us?
Well, one of the really interesting business stories of the past year was the whole drama with Tujak's restaurant, which is saved. Well, not only is it saved, but it's taken another step in the cultural ladder because they've opened a room upstairs, the Coup d'etat room. There's a tradition of having carnival organizations in restaurants like Antoine's and Arnaud's, and even Brendan's had a room. And so in the past week, Coup d'etat opened a room at Tujak's, and so at the very least, we know the Coup d'etat guys are going to be going to Tujak's, and so I think the future of Tujak's looks as bright as does the future of the NBA in New Orleans at this point.
John?
Well, the big entertainment news, Sunday night, the premiere of The Governor's Wife. Edmund and Trina Edwards take to the reality TV show. And from the previews I've seen, I think it's going to be unmissable but unwatchable. and type of thing that it'd be great if just people in Louisiana could see it, with the idea that the whole country's going to look at this as going to be. So, but maybe it'll be entertainment.
But people seem to be fascinated with real TV based in Louisiana. They like our stories. Don?
Big weekend in New Orleans this weekend for Halloween. We've become quite the Halloween destination, both for people traveling with families, also the 3rd biggest gay destination after Southern Decadence and Mardi Gras. Halloween's in New Orleans is the theme of that party. There's also the Crew of Boo Parade, which takes off tomorrow night at dusk in the French Quarter and ends by the Convention Center.
All righty. Gordon?
Well, something a lot of people have been speculating about this week is whether Ray Nagin's going to take a plea deal or not. And based on absolutely no inside information, I'm going to guess that he's not going to. I covered this guy for a long time. I don't think it's in his nature. I think he's going to go to trial. So. All
righty. Well, look, I want to thank you guys very much for being here with us tonight. Thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you next week here in Informed Sources. You have a good evening. Thanks.